Hello, my name is Jimmy, and welcome to another episode of Hombre in Sheep's Clothing. This is a knitting, spinning, and yarny fiber arts podcast. And you can follow me on Instagram as JonBoyNY or on Ravelry under the same username. Today is February 2020, and it's been quite a while since the last time I recorded. So if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back and for your patience. And if you're a new viewer, welcome, and hopefully you'll find something you like here. It's been about 4 months since I last recorded. I think back then I had just gone to Rhinebeck since the last time I recorded, and I had a little accident in the snow a week before Christmas, so I haven't been able to record since then. If you want to know what happened, I'll tell you at the end of the episode, because maybe some people don't want to hear about medical emergencies. So I'll leave that for the end for those of you who are curious. And otherwise, thank you for checking this out. For those of you returning, thank you for your patience and thank you for coming back. And if you are new, welcome, and I hope you find something that you like in here. Since I haven't recorded in such a long time, I have quite a few things that I have finished that I want to show you. I have done a lot more that I cannot show you because I no longer have the end products with me. So maybe I'll mention them, maybe not. I hope this is not too long, so I'm going to try to be kind of fast, and I'm guessing I'm going to be, because some of these things I don't even remember what I used, or like they've been finished for a while. So I'll try to explain as concisely as I can. Let's see. I do remember that last episode I was almost done with my Starflake, the Stephen West mystery knit along for the fall of 2019. I was almost done. I did finish it. I blocked it, and here it is. It's all finished. This was a lot of fun to knit. I think in the previous episode I explained most of the knitting that went on. As a side note, I do live in Brooklyn. I live in a residential building, and I have kind kind of loud neighbors, and I am not able to stop them from making noise while I record. So you might hear some noises. I'm going to try to minimize that in the editing, but if you hear some strange noises, my apologies. Anyway, so back to the shawl. Last time I think I was working towards the end, the border, which is the last glue. I'll just remind you, the star and the stripes are clue number 1, but there are 2 sections that came in the same clue. The brioche is clue number 2. The short rows, the short row sections, which are these, and these, like the wings. These are clue number 3, as well as the yarn overs, the lacy sort of section. That's clue number 3. And then the border is the last clue with the bind off. I did add an extra stripe to the border, which it doesn't call for, but I thought it would be fun to add like an extra stripe to break up the border. And then the bind off is a I-cord bind off in 2 colors, which was very time consuming. It looks really nice. I'm glad I did it. I was not going to do it, but some of the guys at Nitty City knitting group shamed me into doing it, so I did, and I'm glad I did. It's nice. It's huge. I'm happy I did it. I used Chile Knitz in her cuddly sock base, which is a nylon, merino nylon blend. Finished object number 1. I have tons of finished objects. Finished object number 1. The next finished object that I have is this Christmas sock, which, you know, it's February and it's kind of not relevant, but I did knit it. I knit it too. This one was a test knit for my friend. Her name is Belén Fernández. She has a YouTube channel called Tejer en Inglés, which I've talked about in previous episodes. The mission of her channel is to teach and encourage Spanish-speaking knitters to venture into using patterns written in English, because the knitting terms are so standardized. So she usually teaches the knitting terms in English so people can understand the pattern even if they don't speak the language, which I think it's a wonderful mission, because that opens up the knitting experience to a lot of non-English speakers, Spanish speakers. So she does some designs where she writes the pattern both in English and Spanish, so that people can feel even more confident looking at the English pattern, but they have the backup in Spanish in case they want to double check. She did this. This is called Nadal stocking. Nadal it's a word that means Christmas from the Spanish dialect in Asturias, which is the north of Spain, which is where Belén is originally from. She lives in London now. Not in London, in Oxford in England. I made 2. I made this one for me, and I made another one for my roommate because he liked it when he saw it. And his I made in more traditional Christmas colors with a deep red and like a creamier white for the contrast. And the wool that I'm using, or that I used, is Lettlopi. It's the Icelandic wool. And I think you knit this in US 7s, which is 5 millimeters, I think. Might be 4.5 millimeters. I'll have to double check. Finished object. Not relevant anymore, but I thought I would share. The next project I have is this cowl that I test knitted for my friend Veronica. She's from Uruguay. She has a Spanish podcast with Joji Locatelli called Las Knitting Amigas. She's one of the organizers. There is a yarn festival in Montevideo, and she's one of the organizers for that yarn festival. And she started to design something. She asked me if I would test knit for her, and I said I would. And this is the cowl that resulted. The reason for this design is a group of designers from Latin America got together, organized an ebook called Tramando Latinoamerica, which translates into like weaving Latin America. And they all decided they're from various Latin American countries, and they decided to contribute a design that they felt inspired by from their native culture, their traditions, or etc. And Veronica used a motif that she found in Mapuche. The Mapuche people, I guess, were the indigenous people from South America, or some sections of South America. I am not sure how many there are left in Uruguay, where Veronica is from, but they are native to that area. And this is the motif, which I'm not doing a very good job at showing. That's the motif that she found in Mapuche culture that she wanted to use, and that's like the main focal point of the cowl. I knitted this with, again, US 7s, I believe. I think I went to US 8s for the color work. It's a very simple color work. It's not very difficult, so perfect for someone who's trying to learn, or who doesn't have a lot of experience with color work. And I used wool. I'm sure I mentioned in one of my previous episodes, there was this friend, her name is Andrea, who came to New York in the summer. She brought me 2 skeins of yarn, and she is friends with Veronica. She is also from Montevideo, and she might be another one of the organizers for the yarn festival that happens in Montevideo. So I thought it would be ideal to use her yarn. This is hand dyed by Andrea. Her company is called Espacio Lana in Montevideo as well. So I thought it would be perfect to use her yarn. This is a worsted weight yarn, to use her yarn for Veronica's design, since they are friends and colleagues. This is going to be the Belén Fernández Tejer en Inglés episode, because with the leftovers that I had from this cowl over Christmas break, Belén released a hat design that I liked called Tayuela. Tayuela, again, all her designs tend to have names of words or phrases in this dialect from Asturias. So she designed a hat called Tayuela. Tayuela is the milking stool that farmers use to sit on while they milk their cows. And I think that she has one in her house in Asturias, and I think she was sitting on it and she got inspired, and that's how this came about. So I used the leftovers from this to do the hat, and I thought, ooh, it's going to be so cool because I'm going to make the brim in the teal, and then I'm going to make the body of the hat in orange. And then I ran out of orange, so I had to use another leftover malabrigos that I had lying around in my house. So I had to use that to finish the hat. It's okay. I mean, it looks okay. It's not what I had in mind, but the hat, I shouldn't be wearing my glasses because I have a big head. So, and it's super warm. I could also use it as a slouchy hat. Right. This is Belén Fernández's design, and I use the same yarns as this one, almost, and the same. I think the same needle size at US 7. So again, very easy to make. Nice, easy introduction into cable construction. It has a what do you call that? A tubular cast on, where it seems like the knitting goes from one side to the other seamlessly. I of course screwed up, and I cast on more stitches than I needed to, so I had to do some kind of like creative reductions later on when I figured it out. Oh well, I did not want to restart. But yeah, I might do this again, maybe in a single color, making sure that I have enough yarn. The next 2 finished objects that I have are all Belén Fernández's designs. This is absolutely Tejer en Inglés edition. Oh well. The next finished object is this shawl. And it's called Andecha. Again, Andecha is a word from Asturias, and it is at the harvest festival at the end of the growing season. That's, like, I guess Halloween is sort of like a harvest festival in the US and maybe British Isles. But anyway, so Andecha is a harvest festival, and this is the shawl that she designed, inspired by that. And I knitted this. I don't remember what needle size I used, but I'll put it on the screen. This shawl comes in 2 sizes. The original design was done for a sport weight yarn, and then I think that people started asking her if there was a fingering weight version, or asking her to give them suggestions on what to do for the fingering weight. So she decided to amend the original design and add a fingering weight version to the design. So what I did was that I used some leftover fingering weight yarns, but I held it together with some mohair, and I wanted to do a little bit of like a faded effect, but it's not really a complete fade, but I wanted to do sort of like a faded effect with the leftovers from the Shana shawl that I showed you in the previous episode. These are the leftovers, and I held it together with gray mohair throughout. And I think the gray mohair is from Yoshi and Lucy. And I used some, this is some Chile Knitz. And then I used some Yoshi and Lucy for the middle part of the body. And then I used some Chile Knitz again for the second half, or for the last part, rather. And so because I was doing fingering weight and mohair, I decided to do the gauge for the sports weight, but the instructions for the fingering weight. So I was hoping to get a bigger shawl than the sports weight. And I think I mean this is pretty big. This is probably, I don't know, like maybe 7 feet wide, maybe a little less than 7 feet wide, and maybe like 3 feet long. So it's a pretty substantial shawl. It's a pretty simple top-down triangular construction, stockinette throughout, and some yarn overs to make a sort of like feather and fan lace every so often that gets repeated. I think in every section, it gets repeated in every sections, and then occasionally you add a pop of color or a contrasting yarn to add some interest. And I did something that the design doesn't call for. I added a built-in I-cord. I don't know that you can see it. You can just see all the mohair, but I don't know that it's clear that, well, that's a built-in I-cord border along the edge. And then I did an I-cord bind off. That also it's not called for in the pattern, but I did it because I wanted to make it different. I don't know, just because I do whatever I want or something. I don't know. But anyway, so it is blocked. All the ends are woven in. I just haven't cut the ends for some reason. And it's super nice and warm because of the, excuse my messy hair. It's super nice and warm because of the mohair. And I do like the effect. I for the very border, I went back to the first color that I used to make it darker again, to add some interest. And yeah, it's a huge shawl, almost like a shanklet, a shawl blanket. And yeah, pretty happy with the results. And used leftovers of mohair. I used, like I said, I used leftovers of fingering weight yarn, and so yeah, used leftovers. This white stripe is from I had like a little bowl of yarn left from the Zweig sweater that I made for Connie last year, Connie of Chile Knitz. If you've been watching my previous episodes, you don't have to. It's probably best if you don't. But anyway, so if you have, you'll recall that I knitted a Zweig for Connie, and this was the color for the yoke, the lace yoke, and this darker color from here was the color for the body of the sweater. So I used some of that left over, and actually this darker blue color is blue jeans, which is what I used for my Cipla. And I had one skein left over, and I used it for my Shana shawl, and the leftovers from that Shana shawl I used in here. And this color with some sprinkles of red and some yellows somewhere. Not sure it's going to be visible here, but that color is the leftover from my Cipla for the color work on the yoke and the sleeves. So yeah, using leftovers to make this shawl. And finally, the last finished object that I have to show you. I did make other things, but I don't have them anymore. I made a not sure if any of you follows Louis Boria on Instagram or on his website. He goes by Brooklyn Boy Knits. He released a knit crate. He put a knit crate together for the month of January, with, I think, Louis did the knitted version, and Vincent Vesuvius something from Atlanta did the crochet version or design on the knit crate for January. So anyway, Louis designed a cowl, and I tech edited and sample knitted the cowl that he designed. So if you got the knit crate for January and you saw a picture of a cowl that was designed by Louis Boria, I knitted that. So I did that. So that's one thing I knitted in the meantime. I also knitted my mother a storm shawl designed by Joji Locatelli. I did it in silk, but I didn't really photograph it because I wasn't quite done when I had my accident, and even though I was able to finish it and give it to my mom, I wasn't able to block it because I couldn't physically block it myself. So I gave it to my mom for her to block when she returned to Mexico. So so she has the shawl, and so that I can't show you that. And then I also knitted some hats for my roommate for Christmas, and Christmas is long gone. So so those are also been given away. So yep, I've been knitting. But anyway, so the next finished object, the last finished object that I have to show you for today is my 80s retro socks, designed by, again, Belén Fernández of Tejer en Inglés. And that's the only design so far that she's done that does not have a name or a word from Asturias. But anyway, so I am strangely very proud of these socks. These are the socks, because you might recall that last year I hand spun some hand carded batlings that Caitlin, the leader, or the person in charge at the spinning group in Knitty City, she had drum carded for me, and I spun them last year, and I made a 3-ply. This is what I made. I don't know that you're going to be able to see it, but anyway, I made a 3-ply yarn. And this was a blend of all kinds of wools, merino, cordell, recycled silk, mohair, stellina, firestart, I think. So yeah, I don't know if you can see, there's a little bit of sparkle in some of the threads. I spun this and I was very proud, and I knitted these socks. And I'm very proud because this would be the first, the contrasting colors. I'm going to be honest, I did not spin the contrasting colors. These were a gift from Connie. This is her Chile Knitz cuddly sock, merino nylon blend, and it's commercially spun. So that bit is commercially spun. I did not spin that this way. It's so even and perfect, right? But anyway, this is the first project that I've made where I spun the yarn and then I made a functional something out of it. So I'm very happy about it. I don't know that I don't know if people understand my enthusiasm about it, but I feel very accomplished. That's what it is. I feel very accomplished. Like I did something out of love, right? So yeah, I made something. Okay, it's a very simple sock, obviously. Just to teach people how to do socks, how to do German short rows, And the thing, because it's me, I don't, I look at the patterns and then I do my own thing. This pattern is written from bottom up, and I don't like doing my socks that way. So I looked at the pattern, I inverted it, and I did it from top down, mostly because I don't trust my my binding off skills. I feel that either the cuff is going to end up being too loose or too tight, right? Like I'm either going to make it very tight or I'm going to overcompensate, and it's going to be like wavy, you know, like when something is not like when something is too loose. So so that's why I decided to do it from the top down. Maybe one day I'll venture and do it bottom up. I feel that a lot of people like the idea of bottom up socks because they can divide the wool and, you know, knit the foot and then just go all the way up until they run out of yarn, and then they don't have to worry whether they'll have enough or not or whatever. And I guess it makes sense. I like socks that have a very short leg. I don't feel very comfortable with socks that have a very long leg, and they end up being pushed down because I push them down, or because my calves are too fat and they roll down anyway, or whatever, and I don't enjoy them. So why knit a long leg if I'm not going to enjoy it? So I tend to make my socks with very short legs. So that the idea of being like going from the bottom up because of the amount of yarn is not really an incentive, I guess, for me. So, but anyway, so yep, I had and I still had this leftover from the yarn that I made. It was probably about 100 grams, maybe a little less, but I think about 100 grams. I don't remember exactly. And this is what I have left over from this game that Connie gave me. This was a birthday gift 2 years ago. My go-to needle size for my socks is a 2.25 millimeter, which is a US 1, I believe. And my number of stitches is 72, unless there is cables or something that is not going to allow the fabric to stretch as much. Then in that case I go to 80. But usually my go-to stitch count for my socks is 72 on a US 1. I lied. I have another finished object, but it's not knitted related. So I'll show it to you when I talk about spinning. I am currently working on another pair of socks. These are the pucker socks by General Hogbuffer? Hog? Something. Anyway, Hog something. Oh, I should do my homework better. It's a slip stitch pattern. Use slip stitches, then for a while, then you knit them for a while, and you use 2 colors. These are Knit Picks yarns. I don't remember the colorways because I'm not being a great podcaster and not being very well organized is one reason. The other reason is that these socks were started not last year, but the Christmas Day 2018. So I've been working on these for over a year. My friend B, who has a podcast in Spanish, it's called El Podcast de Miso. She lives in Singapore, and I'll talk about her a little bit more in a second. But anyway, my friend B and I decided that we would cast on a pair of socks together on Christmas Day 2018, and we chose this pattern to start it. And I had a couple of false starts. And I chose a different color. It was a self-striping color. Last time it was kind of like with blues and grays. I think I have a picture which I might put in there. And then when I tried it on, I realized that it was too tight and it wasn't going over the bridge of my foot. I wasn't too keen on the color, so I undid it and I changed the color to this color. It's been more than a year, so I do not remember what these colors are. I suppose I could check, but I'm not sure that Knitpicks leaves a record of the... I don't know. Maybe I could check somewhere to find out the names. But anyway, it's irrelevant. I don't think Knitpicks merino nylon blend sock yarn. I was doing them with my standard needle size, which is a US 1, and I cast on 80 stitches because of the slipped stitch nature of the pattern. I knew that you need to have more stitches because it's less flexible. The end result is less flexible. And they were too tight, so I ripped it out and I went up to a US 1.5, which I think is a 2.5 millimeter. And so I started knitting it. I did a pattern repeat, and it was better, but then I kind of lost steam. And over this holiday, I decided that it was just not right, that I had a pair of socks that were just languishing in a project bag for more than a year. So I picked it up and I started knitting the sock again. I finished this one and I started the second. And I have this much. It's almost done. This is the second pair. For people that have to have their socks match exactly, this might be a little cringy, so if you want to look away, you can. But I decided to change the order of the colors. The cuff is in black here, or gray and black, whatever. And the cuff is in the reddish family of colors on this one, and so is the heel. The heel is in gray and black. The heel is in that reddish, yellowish, sunsetty kind of color, and the toe is going to be also in this color. The socks are not going to be exactly matching, but they are going to be the same sock. On just the contrasting heel and toes and cuff are going to be different. I don't know why in my head I thought that if I did that, I would end up using about the same amount of yarn for once I finished both socks. And if I repeated the same cuff, heel, and toe, then I might end up with a lot less, which I don't know why I thought that was important. I thought I was doing something smart. Why? I don't know. A couple of things about this pattern is that it's a free pattern, so I can't complain, and I'm not complaining. That was just my bad, I guess. I didn't pay enough attention. It's a free pattern, so I didn't pay anything other than just click and it's mine. So on Ravelry, it's free. It comes with a chart, the chart for different sizes. The chart is not numbered, nor is it explained anywhere on the pattern. I don't believe. Maybe this is user error. I don't believe that anywhere in the pattern it is explained. So the way I read charts is from the bottom up, from the right to the left. That's how I read. That's how I typically read a chart, right? And maybe it's not correct. Maybe it's different. I don't know. Anyway, that's how I typically read it, right? So I went on and I numbered the charts from did I say top to bottom? From the bottom to the top, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and from right to left, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's how I followed the chart, right? You start knitting that way, but it turns out that it was the opposite. At least I ended up with the opposite pattern. So it was supposed to be like this. But I didn't do it like that. So anyway, what I find fascinating is that no one in their notes talks about that. And everybody in their pictures seems to have the right results. So that makes me question my methodology, right? If everybody else is right, then the pattern is not the problem. Right? But anyway, also, I have to swallow my pride and eat my words. I don't know if, I'm sure on Instagram I did say that, and I'm sure on a previous episode I said too, that the 9-inch circular needles were the work of the devil, and that they sucked, and that my hands were too big, and that I wasn't going to use them. I bought some and I wasn't going to use them, so whatever. I hated them. Not for me. Not again. Blah blah blah. Going back to these socks. Right? I usually do my socks in Magic Loop, and they always end up with ladders, right? And I don't care. It's not a deterrent, but I'm not so fast, right? So I get bored because knitting socks is, well, it can be boring. It's a tube of 80 stitches of the same thing over and over and over and over and over. I have a big foot, right? So it's a lot of rounds. So when I'm doing it in Magic Loop, it slows me down a little bit, and then I get bored and I want to do a different project or something. So I think you can tell. It's Magic Loop, Magic Loop, Magic Loop. And then I was like, well, I'm almost done. And I want to be really done with these socks because I had been working on them for maybe like since the summer. I finished them in January, and I had been working on these since the summer, probably since July, I think, right? And I wanted to be done. I really did. I wanted to be done, so I switched to, and you like I said, you can see Magic Loop, Magic Loop. Then I switched. I had put a stitch marker that was too thick, and I didn't think that would make a difference, but it did. And then I switched it to a stitch marker that was a lot thinner, something like this, right? I switched to a stitch marker that was a lot thinner, and then the knitting got even, right? And it got fast and uncomfortable, but fast. Like, it's a very strange experience because 9-inch circular needles are still from the devil. They are extremely uncomfortable. You have to, well, I have to find the right way of holding them to knit, right? And actually, if I was an English knitter, I think it would be easier, but I'm not. That's not my go-to knitting method. I only do English throwing or flicking when I'm working on colorwork, two strands at a time. But anyway, so they're very uncomfortable, but they're fast. And I knit a lot faster with these than I do on Magic Loop, even though they are a lot more uncomfortable than Magic Loop. But I get less bored. So it is a total contradiction. I don't like them, but I love them. I don't enjoy them, but I enjoy the fact that I can finish my socks a lot faster. Like I said, I took up these socks again on like February 3rd or something. Today's the 20th. So on February 3rd, I had just done one pattern repeat. So it's probably like here that I had done, right? And I started knitting them with the 9-inch circular needles because I had finished those socks. And I did all this. I've done all this in about 3 weeks. What I didn't do in over a year, right? So, and I've done all this, and I'm almost finished. And yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I said that they were terrible, they were uncomfortable, and I still say the same thing, but they are fast. And yeah, so it's a love-hate relationship. I wouldn't give them up now, but they are uncomfortable. So yep. Anyway, so that's my story with these pucker socks. They're called pucker because they pucker, right? Once you put them on, they stretch out a little bit, right? Like probably not neither one. But anyway, once you put them on, they stretch out and they pucker less. But because of the nature of the slip stitching and the regular knitting, when you are working on them, they pucker. And I'm sure once they get blocked, it'll be a little less. And once they get worn, it stretches out and it's even. But yeah. So anyway, my pucker socks, they're almost finished, and maybe the next time I record, they will be completely off the needles. Now this is the last finished object. Right, it is this skein of yarn. I've shown it on Instagram, so if you follow me, you probably have seen it. If you'll recall, I was working on a fractal spin, which a fractal is a mathematical, I guess, a mathematical function. It's a mathematical equation where you end up with things that repeat themselves, right? Like the typical image that it's the image and then you close up and then the image repeats itself, but you've seen that it's smaller, and then you close up again and it's the same image that has repeated itself, and so on and so forth. So the idea with fractal spinning is that you get your fleece, your roving, your top, it's dyed in a certain sequence. So, which, you do this with rovings that are hand dyed, basically, because if it's the same color, then it doesn't, there's really no point in trying to do a fractal spin. But the ones that are hand dyed, that have different colors and different sequence of colors, then you divide the roving lengthwise so that you keep the sequence of colors, and then you spin one of those lengths in just straight forward, and then the other length you divide it again to make two, and then you spin that, and the idea is that you would have one of the threads would have the sequence, the other thread would have the exact same sequence twice, and a lot shorter, because there is a lot less there's a lot less fiber in that length, right? So the color sequences come faster. And what I did as an experiment was that I did it 3 times. So I divided my roving into 3 lengths. Then the first length, I did it straight through. The second one, I divided into 2, and then I spun that. And then the third one, I divided into 3, and then I spun that. So the idea was that each thread would have the sequence a lot shorter, and the repeat would come a lot faster. Anyway, and I wanted to see what it would look like, and this is the end result. All that speaking, just to say that I finished, and this is what it looks like. I don't know what I'm going to use it for yet, but yeah, I don't remember exactly. I think I got over 450 yards or something like that for 4 ounces, right? So it's kind of like a standard fingering weight, 3-ply fingering weight yarn. So yeah, so that's finished, And of course, once I finished that, I had to start spinning something else. And my friend B that I told you about with the socks, she sent me a small package from Singapore. In that package, she sent me a book of what is it called? Singlish. It's like Singaporean English, like dialect words that they use in Singapore. And she sent a roving, right? And I started spinning that, and I thought I would do a 2-ply yarn out of that. And I've divided it into 2, and in those 2, I divided into 2 again because of the colorways. And I finished one of the 1 ounce bumps. So this is about 1 ounce. I'm spinning the 2nd ounce. So I basically divided it into, the roving was 4 ounces, and I divided it into 1 ounce each. And this is the second ounce. And that's what I have so far. I love the color that it's coming out. This kind of like caramel, vanilla, toffee sort of color. Anyway, and these are the first 2, and then I'm going to ply those together and make a like a 2 ounce small skein of yarn, and then I'm going to spin the other two 1 ounce bumps. And I divided them like that because I thought it was interesting that the first half of the roving was very reddish with those golden colors, and the second half was very bluish and greenish with the golden colors. So I thought it would be interesting to see how they're going to look as once I finish plying them, how they're going to look in the yarn form. So that'll be interesting to see. Whatever skein of yarn comes out the nicest, I am going to send back to my friend as a gift for sending me that all the way from Singapore. I think that's all the knitting and spinning content that I have. Unfortunately, I was not able to go to Vogue Knitting Live because of my incident. And so I don't really have much to show you in terms of Vogue Knitting Live content, but my friend Connie, who was vending at Vogue Knitting Live, I was supposed to help her. I feel terrible about that, but you know, you can't, right? But anyway, my friend Connie, who was vending at Vogue Knitting Live, she made sure to come and visit me and check up on me, and she brought me lunch one day, and she got me some goodies from Vogue Knitting that I'm going to show you. One of the goodies is this t-shirt that she designed. It says "Knits are cool," and that's from one of the logos from her company, Chile Knitz. And she was very generous, and she brought me like a tote and this shirt and another shirt, and she got me a sweater quantity of this yarn from her shop. It's called Pavement. And I'm just showing you one, but she got me um, 5 or 6 skeins of this to make a sweater for me, which is very, very generous and very kind. And she also was kind enough to bring me this bag that I had purchased from Hohi Locatelli. It's from her BA bags. Connie was in Buenos Aires in the summer when Hohi and some friends had a like a Buenos Aires knit night, and she was vending these bags there. So I asked Connie to pick me one up, and she did. And this comes all the way from Buenos Aires via Santiago de Chile, and yeah. So, and she also got me some stitch markers because she knows that I love my plants. And that's what the stitch markers look like little leaves. Also, this month, I entered a giveaway, and I won. Can you believe that? I got this from Whimzeestitches. I don't know that it's going to be focusing, but anyway, Whimzeestitches, I'll write it down. He has an Etsy shop, I believe. He has an Instagram presence. He makes these beautiful project bags, and he also dyes yarn. And the giveaway included, which was a very generous giveaway actually. It included a bag and 2 skeins of yarn for the person posting, and included the same prize for the person that you tagged. So actually, my friend Cairo, who's a knitter here in New York City, got the same prize as me because I tagged him. I saw that he posted it on his stories that he really wanted to win the prize. So I was like, hey, I never win anything, but I was like, why not increase his chances of winning? And we won. And so I got the bag, and I got 2 skeins of suck yarn, fingering weight nylon, superwash merino and nylon in these beautiful colors. This is called gray wash, and this is called splish splash, very appropriately. Beautiful colors. So thank you, Rick. I cannot wait to think of a good project to use them with. He also sent a beautiful stitch marker with rainbow colors and a sticker. So again, thanks, Rick. Really appreciate it. Beautiful. So hopefully in future episodes, you'll see me working on those yarns. And the last thing I'm going to tell you about is future knitting. A friend in Barcelona has launched a new podcast in Spanish, and in his introductory episode, he talked about future knittings, and one of them, he showed a Stephen West design that I have on my queue and that I've been wanting to do, and it's called a Seriously Holy. So when I finished watching this episode, I sent him a message and I said, that show's on my queue. Do you want to do it together? And he said yes. And then he said that Mr. Wool from Chile, who also has a podcast in Spanish, had also talked to him and said that Seriously Holy was also on his queue and that he wanted to do it. So I sent a message to Felipe, that's Mr. Wool, and asked him if he wanted to join us and knit it together with us. So he said yes. So we're going to be knitting it together and knitting it with whoever else wants to join us, because we're going to we're going to do a knit along, because we're basically going to be knitting along together, and we're going to call this a seriously transatlantic knit along, the cowl. And it's nothing formal. We don't have a Ravelry group. We're not doing anything special for it. We're just going to be posting pictures of our progress and tagging it with seriously transatlantic cowl, because so that we know how to follow each other's progress. And so anyway, so we're going to be starting that this weekend, and like anybody who wants to join us can join. We're going to start this weekend and we're going to finish whenever we finish. So no pressure if you want to join. But anyway, these are the colors that I'm going to be using for the shawl. Right? I don't have brushed suri, which is what the pattern calls. So I'm going to hold it together with this mohair that I have from the Stranded Dye Works, which is called, I got this 2 years ago for Christmas, Modern Love. And this is Malabrigo and their Machita, their singles. So I'm going to be holding it together. I don't know if I'm going to be holding it together with the gray or I'm going to be holding it together with the red. I don't know if this is going to be crazy or dumb, but I think I want to keep the red as is. And I want to hold it together with the gray and see what kind of color comes out of the two. I'm gonna do probably a swatch just to see how it looks. But anyway, these are the yarns I'm going to be using for my Seriously Holy knit along. So if you guys want to knit that shawl and you wanted an excuse, you can always join us. We'll be happy to look at the pictures and have fun knitting it together, because it is fun, right? I mean, that is part of the idea of the community, right? The knitting community is like my friend Albert is in Barcelona in Spain, and my friend Felipe is in Chile, and I'm in New York, and we are going to be knitting together with whoever wants to join us. So yeah, those are the details, and I'll put more details on the description box below. I will include Albert's Instagram handle and Felipe, Mr. Wool, his handle, in case you want to follow them. If you don't, which I'm sure some of you do already, because Mr. Wool is pretty well known. And hopefully, if you've been thinking about that shawl, you might want to join us. I think that's going to be all for this episode. It's pretty long. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for waiting. And I'm going to speak a little bit longer because I'm going to tell you what happened. But if you're not interested in medical dramas, I understand, and I will see you next time. Thank you and happy knitting. I haven't recorded, like I said, because I had a little accident on the eyes on the week before Christmas. 1 week before Christmas was a Wednesday, and I was out and about, and there was a very sudden snowstorm. I actually had gotten, when I was leaving, I left early because I was gonna meet some friends some friends from out of town to give them something really quickly, and then I was going to go to Knit City for the knit night that they have on Wednesday nights. And as I was leaving, I got a notification that there was going to be a squall, which most people were like, what is a squall? But anyway, apparently it's some kind of like sudden snowstorm or sudden storm, I guess, windy or something. And which was crazy because it wasn't cloudy. I mean, there were some clouds, but it was kind of sunny when I got the notification. So I was like, what? Anyway, so I left, was out and about. It started snowing, and it snowed not that much, maybe like an inch of snow, but it was very quick. And it got really cold. So I went to Knit City, and then we finished. And on our way, I was walking with Kairo, my friend, with whom I won that giveaway with. I was walking with him towards the subway because we usually take the subway together, and I slipped on the ice. My right leg went in front of me, it slipped in front of me, and my left leg stayed behind me. So when I fell, I actually fell on my knee on pavement, and which was kind of painful. And I couldn't get up. I could get up, but I couldn't move my leg. Right? So I kind of got myself to a bench that was nearby. Kaito helped me, and I was like, like curses, in other words. I got a taxi, and I took the taxi home. Kaito helped me to get to the taxi. It was very helpful. He stayed with me until the taxi got there, and he was a godsend, really. And when I was in the taxi, I started noticing that my leg was hurting and that the pain was traveling up my leg, and I thought, something, this kind of pain is not just I fell and like I twisted something or something. Like, this kind of pain is not usual. So I asked the taxi to drop me off at the hospital that is near my house, and at the emergency room. And I went there. They took my x-rays. This, of course, took hours. I went there. They, had me walking about, going from place to place on a cane, and took my x-rays. Then they looked at my x-rays, and one of the doctors that looked at the x-rays said, it's possible that there is a small fracture on your kneecap, but I'm not sure. We're going to by this time, by the way, I mean, they had given me an injection of some kind of painkiller, so I wasn't in that much pain anymore. But they said it might be a fracture. Doesn't look like it, so we're gonna send you home with a knee brace, and come back in a couple of days, or by this time it was like past midnight. So, and they said, come back on Friday. We're going to have a specialist look at you to see how it's progressing. So I came back on Friday, and the doctor looked at my leg, and he looked at my other knee, and then he looked at my x-rays, and he's like, nope, you don't have a fracture. So I was like, yay, great. He's like, nope, you have something worse. Oh, he was very sweet. I'm being sarcastic. But anyway, he's like, no, you have something worse. I was like, uh-oh. He's like, you don't have a tendon anymore. You seem to have cut your quads tendon. And he touched my knee, and he's like, you see this indentation on your knee? It shouldn't be there, because you should have a tendon there that stops my hand from going into your knee. And he tried to make me move my leg, and it wouldn't respond. And then that's when I freaked out. That's when I was terrified, because it's a very out-of-body experience, I guess, when you are trying to tell one of your body parts to do something, and you make a huge, huge effort, and it doesn't respond. It doesn't do anything. So, like, whoa. So anyway, apparently the quads tendon is what helps me regulate the bending of my knee, bending it, unbending it, straightening, whatever. So those don't heal by themselves. So I had to have surgery to repair it. And they had to put some synthetic cables. They had to open my knee and do some run some cabling behind there to try to reattach the tendon that was no longer there to the knee, and the other tendon that is below the knee. And so that's what happened for several weeks. I had to have my knee completely immobilized. So while I waited for the surgery to heal, and for scar tissue to build around the cables so that they're stable, or they hold, they act as the tendon that is no longer there. And so now I have to do some physical therapy for several weeks to try to regain control of my lower leg, my lower left leg, so I can start walking again and stuff. I might, depends, I guess, on how the physical therapy goes. I might have a slight limp. Who knows? We'll see. But I guess it's the slight limp is better than not walking at all. So, but anyway, so that's what happened, and that's why I couldn't record for a long time, because I couldn't sit for long, actually. Because I had the brace all along my leg. It was very uncomfortable to try to be sitting for a long time. Now it's now I have a knee mobilizer that has hinges, so I can move my knee a little bit and I can sit a little bit more comfortable, and so I took the chance to record. But anyway, so that's what happened to me. Oh, there's always a bad step somewhere, right? But anyway, so yep. So I'm recovering, and hopefully in a few weeks I'll be moving about as usual. But anyway, so I wanted to share that with you guys and tell you what had happened, because some of you know, I've mentioned something on Instagram. Some of you have asked me, and so I wanted to share what had happened, so now you know. But anyway, so thank you for sticking around, and hopefully I will not take as long this time to record again. Have a good day. Bye.